Hello and welcome to TEDx Gateway's webinar series, The World Has Changed. This series has been dedicated to making sense of our intensely complex world, and we've invited experts from different fields and covered everything from AI to climate change. It's been a hugely successful run, and we've had over 152,000 attendees worldwide. Before we begin today's session, here are some of the house rules. For attendees on Zoom, please type your questions in the Q&A panel on your screen. The session is also streaming live on TEDx Gateway's Facebook page, facebook.com/TEDxGateway/live. We will be taking questions from the comment section. I'm Nikita Rana, founder of prpro.ai, and today we're discussing which soft skills will take you into the future of work. When we talk about soft skills, we think of better communication, but it's so much more than that. It's empathy, it's problem solving, the ability to accept and give feedback. And I know that with better soft skills, I could have made a much greater impact in all the work I've done so far. Today, we have with us Miss Bailey Parnell. She's the founder and CEO of Skills Camp, which is a soft skills training company working with the world's leading companies. She's one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women, a TEDx speaker with over 3 million views, and a businesswoman with a talent for helping people develop skills that they need for success. Her work and expertise have been featured in many places, Forbes, CBC, Fox, to name a few. She has a master's in communications and culture at Ryerson University. Let's hear from Bailey Parnell.
I want to paint you a picture of what is becoming an increasingly normal morning where I live in Canada. You wake up to your alarm clock and your virtual assistant gives you your meetings for the day. Your sister's texted you, but fortunately, your device already knows your typical responses. You select it, no need to type it all out. You go to the kitchen and grab your coffee, which has already been brewed on a timer. You put some bread in the toaster and your virtual home assistant gives you your traffic report, your weather report, your personal stock report, and the news of the day. Oh no, you've dropped some crumbs. No need to worry, the robot vacuum will clean it all up. Fast forward and you get into your car, which has already been warmed from the comfort of your home. It has also communicated with your smartphone and is playing your morning music playlist. You drive to the cafe because, of course, you need at least one more coffee. You type it in and you will get a text message when it is ready. You drive to the train station and, unfortunately, you're a little bit late, so you catch the tail end of a red light camera. You get to the train station and your car parks itself. Beep, 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 too close to that light post. You grab your Metro card, you tap onto the automatic train, and you go to work. Okay, let's stop there. What if I told you that in this simple morning routine, there were at least 20 instances where the AI, tech, automation, and robots have already become part of your morning? The alarm clock, the smartphone, the robot vacuum, the coffee maker, the Metro card, the train, and the list goes on. Now, what if I also told you that because of these innovations, there are already a ton of jobs that have been replaced? For example, the cleaners, the cashiers, the personal assistants, the executive assistants, the farm workers, the train attendants, and again, the list goes on. This trend of the tech, as we'll call it, taking jobs previously held by humans, is one that was only accentuated by the global pandemic. As we were forced to distance, PwC reported that 52% of companies sped up their AI adoption plans, and that 86% of companies believed that AI would be a mainstream technology in the future of their business. They believe it's going to help with things like improving the customer experience, or finding efficiencies, or increasing cost savings, or increasing productivity. And so with trends like this, then it was no surprise when the World Economic Forum estimated that by 2025, 85 million jobs would be taken by the tech. Now, of course, when I say it like this, it sounds very daunting. But I'm sure that if I asked most people who have a coffee maker or self-warming car if they would prefer it, I think they would say yes. Because one of the things that's often left out of the fear-based rhetoric around this issue is all of the jobs and all of the opportunities that are going to be created because of these innovations. In the very same report, the WEF estimated that 97 million jobs would be created because of these innovations. That is theoretically 12 million more than will be taken away. And this is where I come in. I lead a soft skills training company that works with businesses, governments, educational institutions all over the world. And we help people develop these skills that they need for success. Skills like resilience, collaboration, emotional intelligence, you name it. And so it's through this very unique insight that I've been able to see quite literally what skills companies are asking for right now, as well as the skills that they need to be successful in the future. Because you see, when you start to peel away what robots can do, you're left with some very important questions. On the deeper side of things, you're left with, well, then what does it mean to be human? I can tell you I don't think it's your productivity levels at work. And on perhaps the more practical side of things, you're left with, well, then what skills do I need to be successful in that future? And that's where I wanted to come and help you here today. I started by looking back over the course of the entire pandemic, 100 plus contracts, 50 plus companies, and all that we were asked for. And the top 4 skills we were asked for, number 1, stress management and resilience by a factor of 3 over everything else. Number 2, empathy. Number 3, collaboration and virtual collaboration. And number 4, communication and virtual communication. Wait a second. This means at a time when we had to be more reliant on the tech than ever before, what seems to have emerged as the most important and sought after skills may have actually been the human skills or the soft skills. Again, for me, there was no surprise that by 2025, the WEF also estimates that of the 15 most important skills, 11 of them are going to be soft skills or the human skills. Skills like creativity, like problem solving, like resilience. And so while it seems like the key to the future might be robots, what it might actually be is humans. And so based on my research and based on my work in this field and based on the reports here and otherwise, I'm going to give you what I believe will be the 5 most important skills in the future of work for individuals and for companies. Number 1, adaptability and flexibility. The world is changing fast, and what if instead of fearing that change, we found some way to work with it or to make it work for us? Number 2, stress management and resilience. These changes are going to be stressful sometimes, and mental health is going to wax and wane. But what if we could find some strategies now so that we can bounce back and thrive when those challenges come? Number 3, collaboration. If the global pandemic taught us anything, it's that we are going to need to work together in a much more interconnected way if we want to accomplish anything in the future. Number 4, communication, especially across cultures. The world seems to get bigger and yet smaller every day, and if we want that collaboration to happen, we're going to first have to understand how the other communicates and then try to adapt to each other. And number 5, finally, empathy and compassion, because this would all be a lot easier if we went into interactions as if we loved them like family. Okay, now I know what you might be thinking. How on earth are love, compassion, and resilience business values? Well, let me tell you what happens when they're not. We are already seeing the start of the Great Resignation. And if businesses don't start taking these values seriously in how they treat their people and how they conduct business, they're going to lose the very people they need to get to that future of work in the first place. Just 1 year into the pandemic, the U.S. Labor Board of Statistics reported that 4 million Americans quit their job that April alone, and that it remained abnormally high in the months preceding and following. And I have seen this in the companies that I work with. Among other reasons, People are quitting because they're not getting the flexibility that they need from their organizations, because they're not getting compassion from the customers that they serve, because they're burning out, and because sometimes straight up businesses are putting profit over people. Okay, I said I was going to bring this up and bring this to the future, and that's what I'm going to do now. I want you to be able to walk away from this with your next steps, and instead of focusing and floundering in the fears of the future, I want us to fashion what we think that future could look like. And we're going to start right here. So write this down. These are the questions to ask yourself today. Adaptability and flexibility. What are the skills that you have that could apply to any industry? What are your soft skills? And if you're being honest with yourself, what are the skills that you have to upskill and what do you need to reskill? Number 2, stress management and resilience. When times get tough, how will you replenish your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical energies? Number 3, collaboration. How can you quickly build trust and rapport with someone else? What open-ended questions could you ask that would get you closer to finding commonalities instead of differences? Number 4, communication, especially across cultures. How could you go into interactions with a genuine sense of curiosity and a mutually shared definition of respect? And number 5, empathy and compassion. What if you started thinking about your customers and your colleagues and your communities as if you loved them like family? How would you act differently? How would your business conduct business? Now, I know these seem like simple questions, but I promise you that if you answer these today, you will have already started your future-proofing journey. Okay, I started today talking about the AI, the tech, the automation, and how they're taking jobs only accentuated by the pandemic. But this, surprisingly, is actually not what I want you to focus on when you leave today. I want you to focus on the future and what could be. Because if you go back to that morning routine, the focus should not be on the tech. The focus should be on how the tech makes me feel more human. Do I have a coffee maker because it gives me more time to spend with my family, or because it just gives me more time to do more work? And maybe that should be the question of tech of the future. How does it make me feel more human? Because the key is not the tech. The key is compassion, resilience, flexibility, communication, collaboration. Let me rewrite that morning routine for you. What if it sounded like this? I woke up on time. I wasn't stressed. I got to connect with my sister who lives across the country in a different time zone. Amazing. I smelled the coffee, and when I got to the kitchen, it tasted just as good. I got into my car and it was warm. Thank goodness, I hate being cold. Now that is a different story. That is a story that does not focus on the tech. It focuses on the humanity, because the key is not the robots. The key was always here. The key is in you. The key is in me. The key is to be distinctly human. Thank you.
Hey, Bailey, thank you so much for that. And after listening to you, I definitely feel like I could go through, a course on soft skills. Would you suggest that, doesn't matter what level you're at, entry level or top management, everybody needs like a soft skills course and maybe a refresher after a while?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it through a course for sure, or this can just be a practice that you continue to grow throughout your life. Even when we do something like self-awareness, I'll tell my various students, you can't just leave today having checked off that you're self-aware and you're good to go, because life is going to change and you're going to change, and this is a practice you need to keep up.
So in your talk, you spoke about the quality of being human, and what tech is about is really sort of supposed to help us and maybe help us enjoy our humanity a little more. But if we look at the kind of growth that AI has seen, and the kind of problems it's already solving, it can solve complex problems around protein folding, it can draw paintings, it can play chess. So these skills that we currently consider soft skills and human skills of creativity, problem solving, do you think AI will be able to do those as well? Are these really human skills after all?
Mhm. It's so funny. I love that you're going here right away, Nikita, because this is probably one of the philosophical question from the nature of our existence, which is, what does it mean to be human? Which I think is the first question you're wrestling with there. And I think if you actually look at it, we don't even fully know what it means to be human yet. We have not even mapped out our own neural networks. We don't even know what parts of our brains do. And so we have, spiritualities and religions and scientific theories for what it means to be human. But I think that you can remember, at least for now, that tech that we referenced there, that even the robots that are starting to create music, if you will, that they were fashioned in our image and they were fashioned out of us. And it always seems like with robotics or AI that we're actually just trying to recreate ourselves. And so even when I think about that robot that started to play music, there was the first test, actually, you may know better than most, like the Lovelace test, which is the test for robots to if they've created an original thought. Is that what it means to be sentient? Or, we've entered the matrix once they create the sentient thought. But when we started teaching robots to play music, what happened was we gave them a ton of notes, and they were able to come up with an infinite amount of songs based on the notes that they were able to, play. But what happened was that the robots, while they were able to spit out an infinite number of musical notations, they weren't able to distinguish what actually sounded good. And so what the coders did was they ended up giving these robots musical phrases and kind of like note adjustments. And then what the robot was able to do with that was kind of look through all the songs that have performed well on all of the charts and see which musical phrases were clearly sounding good to the human ear based on what was top of charts. And then the robot was able to put out a song that sounded good to the human ear. So you go to kind of the question again, the more existential question of what is creativity and what does it mean to be human, and who is the creative in that situation? Is it the AI or the robot, or is it the coder that decided, oh, hey, we should give them musical phrases? Or is it the coder that wrote the code? Or is it the initial human that created the musical phrase in the first place that they're pulling from? Or is it you and I who are listening to the music creating the charts that the robot is pulling from? So while I think, at least for right now, what we're seeing is that they're only able to perform these skills so far as we are able to code them. And then instill, that's like an extension of ourselves, which we are human, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you, because in any case, I think AI is at such a nascent stage. So when it will start thinking for itself and doing things by itself, I think we have a long way to go. But now, if we go back to soft skills and talk about their importance in terms of how we perform at work, let's say, I give you the example of, or we hypothetically think about two managers, one who's great at his job, but has terrible soft skills. Maybe this person is rude or doesn't have good communication skills. Maybe is not empathetic. And we talk about a second manager who's okay at a job, maybe a 6 or 7 on 10, but is a great communicator, really handles his team well, has great soft skills. Who is likely to succeed in the long term? Are there any anecdotes or case studies you can talk to us about based on the work that you've done?
Yeah, Nikita, you could not have asked this question on a more perfect week, because I actually couldn't write this better. I have two stories from like the last 2 weeks. One is personal and one comes straight from Skills Camp. So I had a friend over the other night, and she's one of my best friends. And what she does for a living is she's a film and television producer. And so she's sitting with me. And of course, I'm noticing it because I'm thinking about what we're talking about here today. And she says to me, she answers an email and she goes, oh my gosh, I love this woman. I love getting an email from this woman. She's just a ray of positivity. And I said, I don't even know who she's talking about. So I said, who is she? And she said, oh, she's a makeup artist. And without any prompt from me, she says, she's not even the best makeup artist. She's probably a 7, but I love having her on set. And I was like, that is exactly what I'm saying. So yes, of course, she has, right now, you have to have the technical skills of the era for the particular role that you're playing. But I thought it was interesting that the producer, or, kind of similar, a producer plays a role similar to a CEO in productions. And they're able to see that the real value of this person was how they catalyzed those around them. And even through their function of applying makeup, were they able to increase the positivity of the set and the morale of the set. And the proof was right there in the pudding. She was the one being hired. And so that was more on a personal side, and a creative role. But actually, I was working with another company, and what they were doing was, it was the sales department of a tech company. And one of the VPs there was wrestling with a very classic tale, the one that you've kind of just laid out here, which is, I have this manager's left, I want to replace them internally. And I have this one person who's a top performer, but through 360s and through like feedback and whatnot, I know that they don't get along as well with the rest of the team that they would be managing. And I have this, again, the classic tale of this other person over here who might be a 7 out of 10 on the hard skills, or the, like, let's say, like the coding of it all. But I know that they get along with their team and they increase the morale of the team. And I have to say, in my experience, I have almost never seen an instance where the person who wasn't able to catalyze others didn't get the job. Because as you rise higher in your career, usually, and certainly as you start ascending in certain organizations, actually most organizations, your job becomes less about managing things and more about catalyzing people. It becomes less about the things and can you actually perform that technical skill. It becomes more about, can I motivate you all to perform that skill? And then if you go theoretically kind of to the highest, whether that's theoretically, politically, that might be a prime minister or a president that in my mind should be catalyzing the citizens and the people to work towards certain goals together, or the CEO of a company that, again, is supposed to be catalyzing people and even just putting the right people together and solving conflicts and maybe like putting out fires, as we say. That becomes more of their job. So all that's to say, I think the high performer with technical skills, they'll always, like, if they have the technical skills of the day, though. If they have the technical skills of the day, they will be able to get to like a B+. Like, they'll be able to find work, if it's of the day, because we phase them out very quickly. But they're not going to be leadership, and they're very likely not going to be great because they're not able to inspire others. So in the long run, what happens with the poor communicators is they feel disenchanted at work. They don't understand why they're not connecting with others. They go to another workplace, and so their retention is not as long. And so they have lots of bosses, and so they're not as fulfilled. And so maybe we'll talk about this coming up, but those are also the ones at most risk of automation.
Oh,
so I guess that's
okay,
a very long-winded way of saying that the communicator will always win.
Superb. Okay, so this brings me to my next question. So I feel like, of course, soft skills get greatly rewarded, but I feel sometimes like they get rewarded greatly once you're inside the system and maybe high up, like collaboration and conflict resolution. They're great skills for top management. But I feel like these skills are sometimes not enough by themselves to build a career on. Of course, we're not talking about somebody like you. But if you look at the salaries of entry-level tech developers in India, they're often many times what somebody in the communications or media space is getting paid. So I feel like, yes, tech expertise plus soft skills is a winning combination. But if you're looking, if you're at a stage where you're looking at what should I do my career in and what should I study, without technicals, I feel like there may be limited opportunity for growth. Would you agree?
Well, I think we have to kind of break down the premise of your question first, actually, because you're saying that can you build first off a career on these skills alone? And beyond me, I would say there are actually probably many careers that are vast majority of these skills, like a mediator, whose sole job is to solve conflicts between people, and they don't even really need to know what the conflict, they don't need to know the technicalities of a conflict. They can learn that quickly. Or even coaches, like not necessarily just sports coaches, but also once you become a coach, your job is not really actually playing the game, but also coaches like mental coaches and career coaches, all those things, maybe even to some degree therapists, because their job is not to know, I mean, once they actually get into the practice of it, in the practice of it, they don't need to know every last theory and historical study ever done. They need to know how to respond to you and what you need in the moment. And even maybe even to some degree, then teachers as well are getting by on not their ability to produce knowledge, right? That's not what teachers, like a good teacher does. A good teacher actually just facilitates knowledge that's already there. So if they're good at it, they're engaging the student, they're getting them bought in, they're persuading people to pick up an idea or a belief that they didn't otherwise have before. So it's not just me that can make a career based on the soft skills. But I think we have to also remember that we're talking about the future of work in that TED Talk. And right now, in this particular 2022 year, we are valuing certain hard skills, but I do believe that those hard skills will be phased out and they will be automated. And we do have historical, like precedents for this. At one point, a very high paying job was probably the engineers of Xerox machines or fax machines, or there was a high paying job that was designing telephones, or there was, even like if you go back further, like a scribe was a very notable and high paying, wonderful career to have. And we probably did value them compared to other careers. But what happened was that the minute those jobs could be automated and done either, maybe better, faster, more efficiently, or cheaper by the robots, suddenly they weren't high paid anymore. And I think, like you mentioned, an entry-level coder in India right now could be paid higher than a communicator. This might sound a little bleak, but I don't believe that when Facebook and Google and all these places have the chance to automate coding, I believe they will. And I don't believe for a second that they're going to put the jobs of people over the profits, because they're operating within a capitalist paradigm. So if the paradigm supports profit, then of course the end result is always going to forever be, how can we make more profit? Unless we start, advocating for social capitalism, which I do. So it's kind of also like, I think about coders who maybe built their entire career understanding HTML, and they were coding on HTML, and then suddenly it's Java and Python, and they don't even speak the language anymore. And 2 weeks ago they were highly paid, and now they're in a new job and don't know what to do. So we always phase out the hard skills. The hard skills are always changing. We're automating them. We're doing something different. We're changing it in a different part of the world. But that's not to say, though, that if you don't have the hard skills of today, the winning combination is definitely that to like a 7 to like a B+, and then what gets you the A+, even in school, is your ability to, connect and apply it and use it at the right time and engage people and work well with others. That's how we get the A+.
What you're saying about, the top tech companies automating tech, that prediction actually might be a little scary for a lot of people, not just people who are currently employed in those positions. But if you look at all the education startups, especially in India, getting parents to invest so much money in teaching like 5 and 10-year-olds to code, like you have to teach your child how to code now. Who knows
I just got
how much
shivers.
that's going to pay off. Yeah.
Akita, I literally just got shivers. You can't see them, but I am worried about that, because even jobs that we have actually placed on a pedestal for hundreds of years, jobs like paralegals, like lawyers, like accountants, are all starting to be automated. And so that's why I have advocated and worked in the education system. And as you know, I own an education business, but I've been advocating that education is not just about what you pump out at the end. It's also teaching people how to think. not what to think and what to do, but also how to think, and skills like problem solving and creativity, so that when inevitably, this hard skill or the role of a paralegal is replaced by tech, do I even understand the skills that I have that can translate to other industries, so that that change doesn't feel as scary? And that's why we narrowed down those in the 5 soft skills I talked about in the TED Talk, are about, probably most have to do with navigating change and working with other humans in the right way, so that even if your accounting job is phased out, that you understand where you're able to apply that.
So what I want to understand from you is, we're all in agreement that we absolutely need, that soft skills are important and everybody needs them. But who do you see is paying for letting people learn these? Is it private companies investing in their employees? Is it individuals who are investing in themselves, or is it governments? Which countries, which sectors do you see most invested in this?
Yeah, I giggle a little, just because I think you would get wildly different answers to this question based on people's like political leanings. Who's responsible for the development and care of people. And I'll just self-admit that I think, I do, of course, believe it's a multi-pronged approach. I'm not a black and white kind of person, and I never will be forced to be. But of course, it requires all parties to work together. We need governments to start seeing this. My government here in Canada, even as of 5 years ago, part of the reason why I started Skills Camp was because they identified a giant skills gap in our country. And one of the main reasons for that skills gap was a lack of essential skills. Among things like literacy and numeracy, it also included things like critical thinking and problem solving and all of these skills. So we've already, governments, I hope, have started to see that these are actually really important. And with reports like the jobs report from the World Economic Forum, and you can go read that yourself, like I wasn't kidding, 11 of the 15 skills they believe will be most important in just a few years are going to be soft skills. So on one side, we need governments to work together with the educational institutions, with the other socializing parties like parents and media, to value these skills. Like, I call them soft skills mostly just because that seems to be universally accepted, but they're really not soft at all. They're really rather hard to learn. And some people get the benefit of learning that through the ingredients of their life and what their circumstances happen to be. If you had siblings, you probably learned some resilience, because if you're like me and you have 5 sisters, they don't care at all if you're feeling sad about something. You just have to work through that and find success as you're growing up. So we have all these parties that play together. Now, what I said about the political leanings is that people do have very different opinions on whose job it is to take care of the population. And I believe, believe that it's our job to take care of each other. Fundamentally, like I'm definitely would be on that side of things. I would vote more that way, because I believe, and if I make money, I'm okay paying taxes. Like, truthfully, I look at taxes like a subscription. Like, I literally think of them as if I'm part of Canada and I pay a subscription fee. And as part of that subscription fee, I get like roads and good education. And sometimes I don't use every part of the subscription, but when I need it, it will be there. And one of those things I want to be there is, when I have kids, or for the students that I work with, that when they go through school, yes, they cover numeracy, but they also cover how to handle your freaking emotions. So we don't have y'all getting to be adults going through various rounds of anxiety and depression and breakdowns and burnouts, but this was actually able to be taught. It is able to be taught, or I wouldn't have a career. So I know I'm just getting a little bit into ranting, but I do think you'd get very many different answers on that question. My main answer would be that I think that the parties at bay need to work together. Governments need to make this part of like what we learn, and businesses also need to realize that this is what they're just going to need if they want to be around in the future.
No, actually, what you say is absolutely correct. That we may call them soft skills, and it may seem like something easy, or it's like it's just like fluff, and it's just like communication. But these are actually tough. They're hard to learn. They're
Mhm.
hard to implement. And so I want to ask you. Yes, we know that there are lots of stress management gurus and leadership gurus, but how do you really teach somebody, for example, empathy? If somebody is by nature selfish or uncaring, sure, you can take them through the concept of empathy, but how do you ensure they implement it when they go back to work?
You have hit on two wonderful questions there. One is, can you teach this stuff and how? And the second part of it is, how do you track that it's actually happened? And I would say it's actually probably pretty similar to how you learn other skills, honestly, like how you learn like how to play soccer, for example. So let's say we used empathy. Can you teach it? Yes, you can teach it. You can definitely teach it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's also how you learn any skill like communication, public speaking. And we actually have a program called Empathy in Practice. And we do a couple of things there. One, this is just one exercise, because a great deal of empathy is actually creativity, which you wouldn't think so at first. But because if I've not gone through it myself, whatever it is you're going through, and I can't tap into a feeling that has felt the same thing, then I need to actually imagine possibilities. I need to imagine how you could come up in those circumstances, how this would produce this emotion for you. So we do this one small creativity exercise in the Empathy and Practice program, where I will give someone a photo and I'll say, I want you to imagine 3 different scenarios for this photo. They have to be wildly different. So there's one where there's a woman in the park playing with a child, and then she's kind of doing up the child's like coat. And so we think, you make an immediate judgment. They both have straight faces, so you could imagine solemn on them, sadness, who knows, just focus, whatever. And so we come up with a number of scenarios. Sometimes people without fail always put the scenario that this is actually the nanny. Without fail, it's always there. And this is a nanny, and this is a young kid, because the kid happens to be mixed and the woman happens to be Caucasian. And so they come up with that scenario. They come up with a scenario, this is just the mom. And, this is just like, they're not mad. She just focused on doing up the kid's coat, and that's the end of that. There's always other scenarios, like maybe this is, their aunt. Maybe it's just a caregiver. So basically, because we're able to come up with these scenarios, we've withheld judgment, right? We withhold judgment because we don't actually know what's fully going on here. And you take that skill, and I say, let's play it. Go out into society, go out into the world right now, if you're not in lockdown, and observe someone and try to come up with 3 different instances or 3 different explanations for why they're doing what they're doing. One will evoke empathy, one will not. One could make you hate them, one could make you love them. And which one do you choose to go with when you're judging people? Empathy, another one we do is, what is the difference between empathic responses and other responses to people in distress? So while an empathic response might try to get at someone's frame of reference and try to understand why those emotions are coming out in response to that trigger, other responses might be sort of sympathy or consoling or one-upping, like, oh, you should see what I got going on, or storytelling, oh, one time that happened to me, or educating, you should try this, advising. There's all these other responses to people in distress. So we kind of, the same way that a public speaker who's never spoke before becomes one, you break down, what do empathic people do, and how can you actually build that practice so that you start weaving it into your daily life. Now, then how you measure it is you again, kind of how you measure almost any other skill at a workplace. Like, how do I know that you're a good coder? You produce an outcome. The outcome of empathic people might be that their colleagues are connecting with them more, or that they're easier to talk to. And have I actually put soft skills on my feedback? Have we done a 360 review where everyone gives feedback on everyone? And am I observing kind of am I even making this a metric of success? Am I the leader who says, I value this? Because then you're going to get some employees who are like, all right, I'm going to work on this, and maybe we'll work on it together. So then you'll say, okay, you last year you self-reported your skill level here. Your employees, I rated you here, and your colleagues rated you here. Okay, now we're going to do some things to work on it this year. We're going to do some listening. We're going to do some creativity. We're going to do some empathic responses, and then we'll measure it again if you really must measure it. But I actually think that this will be the last thing I say here, because I could go on forever, but probably the most important thing to empathy is, and I think there's actually a ton you can read about this, is have you met someone, like really built a relationship with someone who's different from you in that way? The minute you meet someone, like if maybe you don't have empathy for like X group, whatever group that is, but the minute that you become friends with someone and build a relationship with someone in that group, it can break all other paradigms. So I think connection is actually the answer to empathy.
We'll take some questions from the audience, Bailey. One question from Madeline is, how do we connect with colleagues if we start our jobs during the lockdown? We've never seen each other and we've only, been in conversation via Zoom.
Such a great question. This is one that's been coming to Skills Camp quite a lot during the pandemic. We have full departments who have never met and have just only ever completely worked remotely. And the thing is, you actually can do relationship building virtually. I do it all the time. We conduct team building sessions. I also work with organizations where it's like some are really good at it and some are needing help, but the ones that are really good at it are doing it. I do it too with my own teams, where we get together for a reason that has nothing to do with the work. Like, we're not talking about the project updates. We're actually getting to know each other outside of the work. Even if it's all happening virtually, that doesn't mean that we're working right now. And so this has actually done a number of things. You build trust and rapport with each other, so the rest of the work becomes easier and you get to know each other. When we do go back in person, ideally, we'll have some established rapport. But there's also some statistics about the fact that most conflicts, most communication issues in the workplace are solved by people building relationships outside of the work. Not necessarily outside of work hours, but like if I connect with you, Nikita, about what's going on in your life and we have shared interests and we actually have some fun together, I will automatically have more empathy and more understanding about how to communicate with you. If you're stressed, I'm going to be able to recognize it because we have a relationship that is not just submit your project updates. So for our friend that asked this question, the one tough part about it is you can do some work. You can do some of it yourself. There's no doubt. Like, you can reach out to colleagues and say, hey, I got here. I've never been in person with anyone here. I'm wondering if you want to have like a virtual coffee or something and just kind of get to know each other, 15 minutes of your time, whatever you can spare. Or you can even, if you're feeling weird about it, say, I know this might be weird in pandemic times, but I've never met anyone in person, wondering if you want to go for a coffee or a tea or, here's the tougher part though, is that I tell leaders, this is your job. Culture of the workplace is also your job. And people leave, like there's that classic quote, people don't quit jobs, they quit leaders, or they quit sort of cultures. And so it is part their job, even virtually, to be creating this mental space that people can connect, they can work together, they can get to know each other, or else they're just kind of clocking into a role for the day.
Nadia asks, how do you deal with leaders who are lacking empathy in the workplace?
Quit. Just kidding. Just kidding. That is not an option for everyone. But if it is an option, I would definitely, if you do have the privilege of choosing where to work, I would 100% in the interview process ask them about culture. Like, I would 100%, because you're allowed to as well as the candidate ask questions like, what's your approach to, team building and team dynamics here? And how do you react to people who might be like having, tough times here? So you can ask that in the screening. But of course, if you're already in the job and they're not having emotional intelligence, you still can. You still can. They may not appreciate it as much, but I bet you your colleagues will. Let's say like you're in a team meeting um, and the team meeting is that boss talking to a colleague of yours, and the colleague is trying to explain why something hasn't gotten done by a certain deadline. And there's and the colleague's explaining it, and the boss without emotional intelligence is like, I don't care. It's not done. Now, in that moment, yeah, that's going to be really frustrating, but maybe you could be the one that goes to the colleague later with your emotional intelligence and says, that was rough. I think that was uncalled for. How are you doing? Or is there any way that I can help? Collaboration. And I guarantee you this is going to stand out. The other thing is that, like, if you can explain yourself and try to, like, there's things that you just have to appeal to the logic of the person, right? This is, I guess I wish I knew, like, even when I'm trying to answer this question, I'm asking myself in my head, but what's the circumstance in which they're not presenting empathy? You know what I mean? Because if they're dealing with someone who actually has not produced their work for 3 months, maybe they've tried empathy and it didn't work. And so they're trying a firmer hand. I guess I wish I knew more.
Ashok Kumar asks us, to what extent does technology help or hinder our soft skills? Do we need different kind of soft skills now that we're mostly working virtually?
I think, great question. I think that the soft skills we need are the ones that we've always needed, but they're just applied differently right now. So let's say in the virtual world, we always needed communication skills, but now there's in application, communication skills look a little bit different. For example, I tell some people in virtual communication, like, this is part of how you communicate these days. Like, is your camera, your lighting, your framing. Do you understand how to use Zoom properly? Do you understand how to mute and unmute yourself? This has become like a layer of communication that is absolutely part of how you communicate today. And you're either doing it well or you're not. And so the application has changed, but the skill is the same. The collaboration, still the same. We always needed collaboration. We still need it now. It's just collaboration now might look more, we may have actually been brainstorming physically together in a room before, and I thought that's what collaboration looked like. Whereas now it might be virtually brainstorming in a virtual room. But the actual skill of, hey, what do you think? Or yeah, let's try that idea. Or producing creative ideas is still the same. Empathy, still the same. You're just either applying it in person, or what I say, one thing I say in our workshops is, even if you're over video with someone, there are 9 types of nonverbal communication. Things like body language, facial expressions, paralinguistics, proxemics, this stuff. 7 of them are still available to you over video chat. Like, you can still see my facial expressions. You can hear my intonation and my paralinguistics. If I have pictures in the background of my family or certain art or Funko Pops, like this is objects, there are still 7 of them available to us. So the skills you can still apply, you're just applying them differently. But what was the first part of the question?
To what extent does technology help or hinder soft skills?
Oh, I love this one too. Yeah, that one's a bit different of a question. I think, and a really fun question too, that actually goes back historically, which is, do we drive technology or does technology drive us? And I think it's kind of both. We become sort of like symbiotic with each other. And I also mean technology like when we invented the wheel, not just computer technology, which is what people often jump to today. So I think technology can help us in many ways. There's no doubt about it. Everything I said in that morning routine is true. If you ask most people with a self-forming car in Canada in the middle of winter if they prefer it, they probably do. And I think maybe there's also technology that helps people learn empathy. Like we were saying that question earlier. There's 3D experiences or even like VR experiences that actually make you feel like you are in a conversation with someone, and you start and you have to practice those skills that you've learned. And in that way, I'd say tech is pretty helpful. I would say most people think the wheel is pretty helpful, but humans typically drive how we use tech. Now, one thing I didn't tell you all about myself yet is that the other half of my life and my research is on social media's impact on mental health. So I have a nonprofit that actually looks pretty heavily into digital well-being and how mostly like social and digital media affect our well-being. And even there, and with technology, I have to say, when we're talking about the dark side of social media or this tech, we are often talking about the dark side of people. Like every single time. We're talking about what makes the harassers harass online, what makes someone use a gun at a person instead of for food, what makes someone, do the sort of like harassment we said on social media, what makes someone put profits over people, what makes someone code, even if the people who have coded the algorithm that prefers that you look at models selling shampoo, humans had to decide to create this algorithm that values that. So in most instances, when the tech is not helping us, it's because we're actually looking at the dark side of humans. I could literally go on forever, but nuclear energy. We should be exploring nuclear energy as a form of sustainable energy like for years. We should have been doing this for years now. But because way back, some humans decided to use nuclear energy for the worst of reasons, we've like stayed away from this. Every tech can go good or bad, but it's usually the humans driving if it's going to be bad.
So Indranil had a similar question about the importance of soft skills in a digitized world, but you've already answered that. We'll go to Ricardo's question. He says, based on the data you have access to and your experience, is there a particular soft skill that you think most businesses lack but is essential?
I think there's a lot actually that they lack that are essential. All 5 of the ones that I said there are could be worked on. I think right now what's standing out to me in my head is probably adaptability and flexibility. And because of and the reason for it, why businesses lack it, is actually different around the world, because there's different rules about how companies are allowed to operate, and even how they're, say, for example, allowed to treat employees. So it's hard to be adaptable if you've developed routines that like, let's say you develop processes. You're trying to figure out how to do something, the company finds a good way to do it, and they turn it into a process, right? This process, if we're not clear about checking in with this process every now and then, it can become a routine, which is one of the 4 hallmarks of active inertia in companies. That routine can be something then that is thoughtless. This is just the way that we do it. And we've always done it this way. And is there any motivation for the mid-level managers to change how they do it? It often does have to come from top down. So I think adaptability is an important one, especially when the world is changing so quickly now. And I think leaders have to sort of assess and look into the future more. What changes are coming and prepare for them now. And so often we know the problems before they come. Even the pandemic, this was been predicted for years. To me, it makes perfect logical sense. If we increase global travel and we make it more often and more frequent, it was only a matter of time before then viruses from here can spread to here and can then spread to here. And it's going to go really fast, and it's going to be like nothing we've ever seen before, because we've never had global travel like anything before. What we did not do to prepare, and we seem to still not be doing to prepare, which bothers the heck out of me, is then if we have global travel and the global risk of health has increased, global health matters to everyone now. It actually needs to matter to me in Canada about the health of people in Ghana. Because If if they don't have vaccines and the virus can mutate there, it doesn't matter where the virus mutates. If we have global travel, it's going to mutate wherever it can find the space to. So it's almost like we haven't prefaced this with the preparation that we need to do, understanding these risks. Anyways, I think I'm ranting again, but I'm very passionate about this stuff. So I'm glad you're all here.
Anand asks, how can someone handle a group of different people from different cultures and belief systems, especially during a training session?
Good question. We also teach cross-cultural communication, and you'll note that in the TED Talk, I said that one of the important skills is going to be communication, but particularly across cultures. And the reason for that is what we just said about globalization. And I think this is going to be especially accentuated by the pandemic, because especially for here in North America, what the pandemic did to people was when we were forced to distance, and we weren't forced to be geographically near our workplaces anymore. People moved everywhere. This also allowed talent and companies to do two different things. Talent could start saying, Canadian talent could say, well, if I don't have to physically be there, I'm going to take a job in the US. And I'm going to take a job that's exactly the same, that pays more because it pays in USD. And I can now because I don't have to move there. And the same thing with companies. Canadian companies were able to recruit the best foreign talent because they no longer need to worry about moving here. Well, this is going to be a very big concern, isn't it? And I guess, wait, can you repeat the question?
How do you train or handle a group of
Yeah.
people from different cultures and beliefs?
Right, yeah. So the cross-cultural element, that's why it's going to be more important, is because we're actually communicating across cultures more. But there are things that we do in our sessions based on specific cultures. We actually use Aaron Meyer's culture mapping as well as Hofstede's cultural dimensions. These are so helpful for people to understand, because within the course of a 90-minute session, we've done, for example, companies that work in Russia that are trying to work with US companies. And they'll say, like, we're just having like differences here that we're not fully understanding. And there are different dynamics. We deal with things like how we give feedback is different in different parts of the world. Some countries have literally been socialized to be very direct. And it would be very normal in Germany, for example, to be at a boardroom table or even a virtual boardroom and to give someone harsh feedback in front of everyone else. But if you did that in Canada, your employees would be shocked. It's very normal in India, for example, to have a more hierarchical distribution of power in companies. And it would be normal to say, whatever the boss says is what we're doing. And you don't really test that. And you don't really question that. But when you come to America, then they have a much more like even or flattened distribution of power dynamics. And it would be very normal for a CEO to be, almost like quite literally be sitting on the same floor on the same open concept space as their employees, having, a drink together. So because they were able to learn these through the dimensions so quickly, like almost like overnight, they're able to go into conversations in these training sessions with people from around the world and know that I'm not going to assume you act this way because you're from India, but I'm going to keep it in the back of my head that it's a possibility that you may do or act or think a certain way because of where you were raised. And I allow for that possibility, and hopefully they allow for it too. Some strategies, some things right away that can help you, though, no matter what the culture is that genuine sense of curiosity. Am I going in like immediately really feeling like my way is the better way? And I'm just going into the interaction like that? Or am I genuinely interested in what Nikita has to say? Am I genuinely curious? Why do you do it this way? How come you share ideas this way? Why do you give feedback this way? Where did that come from? That genuine curiosity comes across every time. And I think I also mentioned in the TED Talk, can I ask questions to get to commonalities quicker? This is also a huge skill that you can implement tomorrow in your training situations that are cross-cultural. We might ask open-ended questions to build rapport quickly. Things like, what's it like over there right now with COVID? COVID sucks, but it's actually been this weird global unifier. So I'll ask people like, what's happening right now? Or what was your experience like? Or what did you learn about yourself in COVID? And I've found that these are intensely global experiences. When I talk to people about social media and mental health, we have ambassadors from countries all over the world. And you know what I found? The issues are exactly the same. So there are so many great connectors and unifiers between us. And am I going in focusing on, oh, wow, I shake hands and you bow? Or am I going in saying, wow, we both have great mutual signs of respect for each other? How do we get to that? It's usually through open-ended questions.
Thank you so much, Bailey. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Thank you for guiding us on how to equip ourselves for the future of work. Thank you all for tuning in to today's session. You can sign up for future webinars on TEDxGateway.com. Upcoming sessions on 29th Jan, we have Michaela Musilova. It's going to be a really interesting session on preparing for a life beyond Earth. On Feb 11th, it's a session with Padma Priya. On Feb 12th, Tara Kaushal. Feb 18th, Ashwani Deshpande. Feb 25th, Anandito Mukherjee. And on March 25th, Shailesh Gandhi. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.